This episode is brought to you by MeUndies. Underwear drawers are like the Wild West. You never know what you're going to pull out or what shape it's in. So upgrade your collection with the buttery soft comfort of MeUndies. MeUndies' signature fabric is as soft as a warm hug from your favorite sweater. Plus, it's breathable and oh so comfy, making it ideal for all-day wear. Get 20% off your first order, plus free shipping at MeUndies.com/Spotify with code SPOTIFY. That's MeUndies.com/Spotify, code SPOTIFY.
Look around. You can find cars like these on AutoTrader, like that car riding your tail. Or if you're tailgating right now, all those cars doubling as kitchens and living rooms are on AutoTrader too. Are you working out and listening to this ad at the same time? Well, multitasking pro, cars like the ones in the gym parking lot are for sale on AutoTrader. New cars, used cars, electric cars, maybe even flying cars. Okay, no flying cars, but as soon as they get invented, they'll be on AutoTrader. Just you wait. AutoTrader.
Jewelry isn't a gift you give just once. It's a way to remind your loved one of a beautiful moment every time they see it. Blue Nile can help you find the gift that says how you feel and says it beautifully, with expert guidance and a wide assortment of jewelry of the highest quality at the best price. Go to BlueNile.com and experience the convenience of shopping Blue Nile, the original online jeweler since 1999. That's BlueNile.com to find the perfect jewelry gift for any occasion. BlueNile.com.
Hello and welcome to the Ground Jewels. My name is James Dixon and I'm delighted you've joined us this week to talk about special sporting places. This week we're off to Italy and we're off to northern Italy and specifically the San Siro Stadium in Milan, one of the iconic venues of world football. First came into my consciousness in June 1990 watching that great Cameroon-Argentina game. All the colours, all the pageantry of that Italian 90 opening ceremony. It's 35 years on and I can still take myself back there mentally. And so it's going to be a really interesting chat about the San Siro with a brilliant guest, Qasa Alom. And I was just it'll come up in the interview, but I was just watching Mastermind over Christmas and someone's doing AC Milan as their specialist subject. Right, that's the guy I've got to get on the podcast, and he was brilliant and you'll enjoy it and it'll be lovely. Everything great like that. I just want to say thank you to everyone for the overwhelming reaction, positive reaction to Daniel Story's episode last week on Blundell Park. Just crazy numbers that last week's show did. So hopefully some of you have stuck around to to hear next week's show. And so, welcome to all the Grimsby Town fans. Welcome to all the Daniel Story fans. Please stick around. It's a lovely little podcast that we have. Each week we talk about a different special sporting place. It's great. And before we get on to our interview each week, we wrap up a little bit of stadium news from around the world. I'm going to go to Liverpool first because there is controversy over the planned parking zone that's coming along with Everton's new Bramley-Moore Dock Stadium, basically making any business anywhere near the stadium now pay the city council for parking permits, whether they're used on match days or not. Petition's gone quite big. It's sort of kicked off. I imagine there'll be some sort of climb down, but who knows? You don't know. Local councils need money, don't they, these days? So maybe they're seeing the stadium as a quick revenue raiser. But that will be interesting to see. And the test events are happening soon, so fingers crossed everything goes well with that. And oh God, how good was Goodison last week for the Merseyside derby? What an atmosphere! What a way for that stadium to sort of not bow out, because obviously it still has many more games left, but spine-tingling stuff, wasn't it? So yeah, really great stuff there. Really great stuff at Goodison. Interesting stuff to note happening around Bramley-Moore Dock. But I now want to take you to the complete other side of the world, Southern Hemisphere, and take you to Brisbane. We talked ages ago, I can't even remember when, about the 2032 Olympic Games in Brisbane and the sort of stadium issues there, because the government in Queensland had said no new stadium. The Gabba's not quite right. There's other stadiums which would need massive upgrades. There's athletic stadiums further down the Gold Coast, but that's not in Brisbane. So it was just like, how are they going to solve the IOC this stadium question for the 2032 Olympics? And apparently there's been a commission that's set up. And you can just start to see the backtracking from the Queensland government. And I don't know what pressure the IOC is putting on, etc. But the Premier of Queensland, which is like the equivalent of a state governor in American parlance, I don't think we have the same thing over here. Maybe the Mayor of London or whoever, but that sort of thing is now saying, well, he's sort of backing away from his statement, saying, "Oh, there's going to be no new stadium for the Olympics." Yeah, it's now saying that there's a commission, there's a process, and it doesn't need political interference. So you're just starting to see that kind of unpicking there. And so who knows, maybe there will be a brand new Olympic stadium for 2032. And of course, that's only one Olympics away. Although, oh God, just realised Trump's going to be in charge for the 2028 Los Angeles Olympics. Goodness me. Right, never mind. Well, maybe the Olympics won't make it to 2032. We'll all be lucky, won't we, if we get there? So yeah, that's it. That's the stadium news this week. I will just drop in. I had a lovely trip to Valley Parade. I went to watch Bradford's awful game. I mean, genuinely appalling game against Accrington. Sometime in February. But I had a lovely trip to Valley Parade. I really enjoyed it as a stadium. Yeah, it was a really nice experience. So maybe one day we'll have someone on to discuss Valley Parade. Obviously, it's one of those stadiums that you want to be careful about describing as a ground jewel, because you do want to be cognizant of all the things, the terrible things that happened there, with the fires, whatnot. But as Bradford fans, I mean, I don't know how many exactly they had in, but like huge numbers for a cold Tuesday night in February in League Two. And they've been in that league for a while, stuck down there. Massive club at that level. And I really enjoyed it, even though, catering wise, possibly the worst burger I've ever eaten. So, yeah, the good and the bad of stadium. I should have just had a curry afterwards. That's my fault. It's a bad decision I made, and I apologise to myself. And I apologise for taking up your time with it, because let's get to our brilliant interview with Qasa Alom about Siro, Milan. Today on the Ground Jewels, we are joined by Qasa Alom. Qasa is a broadcaster from Birmingham, and he came to my attention recently while watching Celebrity Mastermind at Christmas, because his specialist subject was AC Milan under Carlo Ancelotti. So no surprises really what ground we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about the wonderful San Siro Stadium in Milan, although technically not the name of it. But Qasa, welcome to the Ground Jewels.
Lovely to be here with you, James. Thank you so much. For watching that episode, and then reaching out, inviting me. And, when someone says, would you like to come on and talk about your favourite football stadium? Of course, I'm going to say yes. It's funny. I don't normally like to do these sorts of, not like this. I don't normally like to go on podcasts and that sort of stuff. Simply because I'm like, why does anyone want to listen to what I have to say anyway? And B, I'd just rather just do my own job. But actually, if it's something as pleasurable as taking a trip down memory lane, talking about memories, times at the San Siro, which still for me takes me back to the first time I ever went there. And I'm very lucky I get to go there a fair bit. Of course I'm going to come do this. And great to speak to you as well, someone else from Birmingham. We get around.
We do get around. I just need someone from Camphill and Handsworth Girls now to complete the King Edward's Birmingham set on this podcast. So we'll get there in time. But how does a British Bangladeshi boy growing up in Birmingham become an AC Milan fan?
It's It's actually pretty straightforward, would you say? Believe it or not, because like probably like you and like most of the people, I grew up and TV was effectively like childcare. It wasn't like these days, these weekends where you've got like playgroups and all that everywhere. You just sort of sit there on a weekend and you just watch loads of sport. That's definitely what I did anyway. Saturday morning it was Gazzetta Football Italia, but before that we had all the other stuff, and then we had like the cricket on as well, and then of course you'd have grandstand, that sort of thing. And then on Sundays, usually you'd have James Richardson with at least one football match as well. So that for me was always like appointment viewing, and I weirdly had this pencil. I've told this story like a bazillion times now. It's almost like, is this actually true? But in my head it is. I had this tiny little pencil that was red and black. Like the stapler ones that are yellow and yellow and black. For some reason, I found one in school which was red and black, and someone had written AC Milan on it. Clearly because it was those colours, and obviously like in the 90s they were like pretty damn good team. So for that reason, I was like, okay, what is this? This 7-year-old boy of me is like, okay, AC Milan, what is it? And then obviously I started watching Gazzetta Football Italia, and then they were playing Lazio, and it was an incredible match. And I remember the colours. I'm pretty sure Milan won, 2-1 or something like that. And again, these old memories are sort of fade, don't you? So you kind of want them to win. But I just remember being taken by this team in red and black, and then seeing George Weah as well, and he was just so cool, so captivating. I just literally fell in love, and and there's loads of reasons why I supported them, because as a 7-year-old, it didn't cross my mind that they were hundreds of miles away in a completely different country. I just thought, this is just football and it happens on TV, and I'm going to watch it and I'm going to like this team. And that's kind of what I did, especially as I had this pencil with their name on it. So I was like, yeah, that is going to be my team. But then on top of that, there's loads of other reasons. Like a lot of the players, like growing up in Birmingham, in the part of Birmingham that we grew up in, my mum just said, you're not going to go to St Andrews. We were in that area. Like, you just absolutely won't be going to that football team. And well, not necessarily the football team, just to the stadium, because it was there. Because obviously she grew up in the 80s, and there was a lot of hooliganism, racism in football at the time, so she was just like, absolutely not. And so, when I saw football and when I saw Match of the Day and when I watched it, it did seem a little bit more hostile. And I still loved it. I absolutely, I'm not an Arsenal fan at all. In fact, I don't really support an English team. I'd like players. I was one of the original sort of I like a player. So when I saw the likes of Robert Pires and Thierry Henry, for me, they were like, wow, these guys are so cool. It was style, obviously the Renault Clio advert and Vavavoom, but it was like, they brought a little bit of European panache. And I guess, looking back, and I've had a lot of time to sort of think about this, but, subconsciously the othering, because I actually had a great childhood, thankfully I've being in Birmingham, very multicultural, obviously grew up around the time of the Twin Towers and everything, lots of things happening around me, but at the same time, it's never been like a crux for me. However, clearly in football, I slightly identified with the foreigner. Clearly that is one of the things. And I guess for me, Italian football was also part of that. The irony being that there is a massive racism problem that still exists in Italy, like many other European countries as well. But for me at the time, I just saw these guys like Paolo Maldini with flowing black hair who were slightly darker skinned, and I was like, I want to be like them. And clearly that's what made sense. And when it was in the Premier League, when I saw the likes of Thierry Henry, again, British Bangladeshi, he's not, he's French. However, I saw that and I was like, these sorts of cool guys with their way of playing and their style, that's who I like. And I guess that's kind of partly, like, looking back, why I really got into Serie A, but also at the same time, and this is probably at the time the biggest reason. Sorry, I know I'm going off on one, but this is kind of how I am when I'm passionate. It was on TV, mate. It was free to air, and like it was on Saturday mornings, every single morning. James Richardson was fun. We had Peter Brackley doing the commentary, and then the same on Sunday. And like, I just needed to switch on to Channel 4, and like these days, I mean, as a sports broadcaster, I don't know how much I spend, having to keep up with the football because it literally is my job to do that. But also B, just how infuriating it is to have to go from one to the other to the other. It's so splintered, and even like if we're taking Italian football now, I still follow Milan as much as I can, and thankfully they were on TNT yesterday morning when they came from 2-1 down to beat Parma in stoppage time. It was bizarre. However, there's been games this year that I've not actually been able to watch. The only way I'd be able to watch them is going on a betting site and signing up, and that would pretty much be it. So the way that the football rights, particularly for European leagues, have splintered is something that is certainly going to, price out, but also just sort of marginalise loads of kids these days who probably would get into different football. And there are a lot of parallels we can draw from that time as well, because we had the likes of Paul Ince and Gascoigne and David Platt who were venturing over to places like Italy in the 90s, which is why we got so into Italian football on Channel 4 because of the interest of them. And now we've got that, with Milan, we've just had Carl Walker move over, but on top of that, we've got Tomori. I think Tomori's been there for 2.5 years. Tammy Abraham, who joined the team last year. Yunus Musa, who obviously is an American international now, but he played for the England under-21s, and he's English-speaking as well. So there's a really strong English-speaking contingent at AC Milan, but also further in the league. And of course, let's just look at Germany with Dortmund and Bellingham in Spain. There are a lot of English players going abroad, so it'd be great if young kids could able to watch them as well.
Yeah, that splintering of TV rights is really interesting. My latest book, which won't be out till next year, is actually on Grandstand and looking at that show and how the sports rights market affected how we sort of consumed things. And it seems silly now, but I say this point to friends. It used to be annoying having to pay 30 quid a month to Sky. Everyone was just so annoyed by that, but I would take that in a heartbeat now, rather than having to give £20 a month to 5 different people to watch everything. Because at least, when it was on terrestrial, there was that capacity that you couldn't watch all the sport that you want. So we needed a Sky Sports or so, a dedicated sports channel. But now we've got 5 dedicated sports channels. There's not enough to go around, and it's really frustrating as a fan. But you touched on that brilliant time, because Channel 4, this is a side quest we're going off into now, but Channel 4 only wanted the Lazio games. They didn't want to broadcast Football Italia. They just wanted the Lazio games because Gaza was big. And the Italian Federation said, no, but you can have the whole league. For what you wanted to spend on just the Lazio games, we'll give you the whole league. And this thing is bored and it's huge. James Richardson obviously made it with sitting there sipping his cup of coffee and having his ice cream and just making it this impossible coolness from the best league in the world just coming to us for free when our product, our sort of meat and potatoes product, gets taken away from us. And Sky do a good job and the money comes in, but it's just Hullet, Van Basten, Rijkaard, the free Dutchman at AC Milan, Bremer, Klinsmann, Mateus, same stadium, Inter Milan. And then you've got, Rudi Voller's there and all these Tino Asprilla, that Parma team that comes up in the 90s. It's just such a great time. And I can understand as well, if you're not gravitating for whatever reason to a local team, to go, actually, this is better. And then you get the Champions League nights, on ITV when that was a big thing and everyone watched the Champions League because they were starved of football. So I get it. I completely get it. When did you first go? When did you go from the kid who loved them from afar? And you must have thought about this stadium quite a lot because it's iconic and it's very unusual for Italian stadiums because it's built in an English style. And AC Milan obviously have a tremendous English history. There's still a St. George's cross on the badge because founded by an Englishman. It's originally built as a 4-sided ground in 1925. It's renovated after World War II, and then you get the sort of steep sides and the sort of spiraling staircases around. And then the stadium we know today sort of comes in because Italy are hosting the 1990 World Cup. Massive architectural project, putting the 3rd tier on, putting the girders on that roof, and those heli staircases that support everything. I've never been. and you can tell I love this stadium. I've thought about it. It was in FIFA football games. It's one that I really want to go to before it might be no more, and that's something we'll come on to talk about. But when did you first go, and could it possibly live up to the anticipation in your head?
Yes, 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 yes. Before we even get to the stadium, it lived up and was so much more. But yeah, we'll come on to that. You've done a really good job at sort of describing how I feel about it and how so many other people feel about it. And it's funny you mentioned that about the Lazio deal. I'll come on to your question because I'm definitely going to answer it. But I think it was a Milan Lazio match I watched first, which is why. And I think, you know, again, I might be adding things up, but I think it was like Lazio were being given the big billing, but actually Milan won. And I was like, I like this team because they won. And also they're the same as the pencil. So definitely that it all makes sense now. I first went because my mum is an absolute legend. And I just don't realise how much of a legend. I wouldn't do this now. But I was 15 at the time. And Milan were going for the league was I 14? It was around that age, basically. I was still in school because I went with a school friend. It was year 10, year 11. 2000, so you can tell how old I am. 2004, Milan were playing Roma, title match, effectively. It was in May. It was for my birthday. I'd saved up a fair bit of money, and then she just sort of paid for the flights and just said, use that as spending money. But it wasn't really about the money. It was the trust that she allowed. I think, we must have been 16. It was around that age, but she just allowed us to go watch this match. And she said, go on. It was like a package sort of thing, where, they pick us up from the airport and they take us to the hotel and then we go to watch the match. And it wasn't like luxury or anything. We were in the third tier. We were sat up and we could see the ultras beneath us. And yeah, we went to the match. It was my very first time. I was a teenager and not even getting to the stadium. Forget that. Getting on the tube, on the metro system, and then you're down there, and then you see all the graffiti, and you see the faces. That was the era of like the night football as well. Where you had like Roberto Carlos, Paolo Maldini, Cannavaro, Figo, all them, their faces on every poster. And then you got the graffiti along the metro, and you're like, oh my God, we're here. This is where I want to be. And like, very unusual for this country, but fake T-shirts are everywhere on the stalls when you wander around, the scarves, just even in the town, in the city centre by the Duomo. You're like, yeah, I'm going to get these. So I spent goodness knows how much money on crap on tap, but actually, it's worth it because I've still got it now. And I could just feel that carnival atmosphere building. Then you get on the metro, and back then it wasn't like touristified like now, where they literally have a sticker saying this is where you get off to go to AC Milan. You really had to figure it out. We had a travel book. And then we were like worrying about that so much, and then all of a sudden, you just see hordes and hordes and hordes of Milan fans get on with their cut scarves, with their T-shirts, and they're all Italian, talking Italian. And I was like, I think we just follow these people, and that's what we did. And then, and it was the sound on the metro was incredible. And then I've been recently, and then there is literally a metro stop right outside now. But back then, I think we had to walk a mile down this massive boulevard, and you go past, and then, like you said, you've got the really cool sort of stalls where you got guys who'll just sip a coffee for like €1 or a shot of espresso, and then next to it you've got like these sandwich bars. But everything had that sort of feel of colour, of noise. It felt different. And then you go around the structure, and then you just see it just sort of opens up in front of you, and you see those huge spires of the four spires of the stadium, the towers, sorry, and there it is right in front of you, and it is just like it's a monolith of a building. It's brutalist in the way that it's made with like slabs of concrete and just this huge dome, and I was just in awe of the sound of it, inside and outside, because of the way it's been built, and it's just so open at the top but so high. It is like a huge bowl where you have all this sound bouncing off of it, so all around you can hear it. And then as you're going up the towers, the spirals, it is just solid concrete, and it's cold, and it's not like stadiums here in this country, like the new ones, like say for example Brighton or the Allianz Arena in Munich. I've not been to the Spurs one yet, but I've heard that these are lovely and they're very comfortable. And that one, it's like, you better have your gloves, you better have everything ready because you're going up and you can feel the wind on you, and there's not really that much. If you want to if you accidentally slipped out, then you're done for, But from the top, you could see all these people at the bottom. They're tiny, and there's police everywhere. Of course, the Roma ultras are pretty hardcore, and both are 1 and 2. So you had all these police there as well, lined up to separate the Roma fans on one side and then the Milan fans on the other side. So, and there was oh yeah, that was another story. So we were walking, and my friend's a Villa fan, so he's pretty used to this sort of thing. And then all of a sudden, we feel the tear gas, and I was like, Rich, we're getting tear gas. This is amazing, because it's what you see on the in the pictures and stuff. You're like, oh my god, we're in it, we're properly in it. And rather than saying anything, he literally just grabs 2 scarves off the stall and puts one around me, gets one on him, and we just sort of move to the side and let the police come and just dissipate all the commotion and everything. And then we just sort of get into the stadium. And then when you're in the stadium, it is so steep. And like I said about the acoustics of the place, you can hear everything and you can hear nothing. And what I mean by everything, you can hear cheers, a pin drop, every ball being kicked down there. But at the same time, you can't hear anything because the noise around you is just swirling around, and it's really disorientating because it's just like on top of you, it's so open that it just sort of goes everywhere. And you talk about those towers and the sides that were filled in. You can feel that, you can actually see that whilst you've got the original stadium, you've got scaffolding there and there. And that first time I went, I remember going and just thinking how high we are. And it was kind of like sensible soccer, the view I had of just like dots sort of moving around. And yeah, but we saw the goal. It was at the perfect end. So the match starts in Milan, so we're on the opposite end of the ultras. So I had the best view of like the choreography on the other side. It was just incredible. So Cafu comes down the right-hand side, crosses the ball, and Shevchenko header, I think it was like the 5th minute, goes in. Best way to start. And then the crowd go absolutely wild. I'm going wild. No one's sitting down anymore because like we're third tier, everyone is pressed up against the glass. And it just goes like that. And you think Milan are going to do it. And to be honest, I think Totti gets injured. And you pretty much know Roma aren't going to score. But at the same time, typical Italian, when you got Nesta and Gattuso and Maldini, they're just like, right, let's just shut up shop. Take the 1-0, and afterwards, I just can't remember, mate. We just followed everyone. There are pictures of me in the Duomo up a lamppost. Like me and my friend don't speak Italian, don't know anybody, but we're just partying with everybody. It's incredible. And one of the best experiences just now.
That's I think this sort of thing that you could only do with the naivety of youth on your side, because when you're describing that to me, of tear gas, of police, of being in a place where you don't speak the language, where you're really, really other, compared to the people around you, and it's just like, and you're loving it because you've got this joyful, youthful, like I can still see from the face that you definitely, the love that you have from that. I think I'd be shitting myself, to be honest. It's just like, I don't know. And fair play to your mum for doing that, because my dad got me a football trip for one of my birthdays, but it was to Coventry and to Highfield Road. It wasn't quite the same as going all the way to Milan. So that is brilliant. But yeah, so they win. Do they win the title that day, or is that just the key game?
No, they won the title that day. Full party. They won the league. First time since like 99, I think, that they've won it. Carlo's first title. And it was huge for Carlo as well because he'd come so close at that point. I mean, we now think of Carlo as like, the man. But I remember back then, like, he'd won the Champions League with Milan the year before on penalties against Juve. But that was it. Before that, he was the nearly man. I mean, with that Parma team that you talked about, he was second, I think. Yeah, he finished second with Juve. Juve with Zidane in the team, they came second as well. So for a lot of people, Ancelotti at the time, it was too negative, and it was a bit of he was the bridesmaid. And then, of course, Milan took a punt on him when Fatih Terim wasn't doing very well in 2001, decided to get him in to just sort of get them into Champions League. He did that, and the rest is history, you know. Then they get a couple of smart signings, and then like the archetypal, you know, distinctive style we now see of Carlo, man management, but not just that, getting all these superstars onto the pitch at the same time and figuring out a way to make it work. It's kind of all started there because, you know, you got Pirlo, who now we see of as this like genius and like this deep line playmaker. You know, at the time he was sort of like a number 10. You don't put a player like that in front of the defence. But then you know, Carlo's decision, having a chat with him and saying this is what Carlo Mazzoni, Pirlo's manager at Brescia, did. Let's put him in that regista position as the director. Seedorf, someone else who's a number 10. Let's play him as like a number 8. And then, and then there was that constant battle about, do we have Shevchenko and Pippo, or they have to make them both work together? I mean, he's got that sort of thing now with Vinicius and Mbappe, and he's still figuring it out. So that hallmark of Carlo being able to say, guys, you're going to play together, we're going to make it work. It started there, and he won the league that year, and it was incredible, and they should have won far more.
Well, we can certainly come on to that, because you'll have a very different perspective than most people about if I say the words Istanbul to you and things like that. Yeah. So yes, it's a really interesting time. So this is so I suppose let's go for it. You go there, and you have this sort of inculcation into Milan. That could very easily be like a one and done thing. It could just be a nice experience that you have. But what sustains it for you, and how do you sustain that? And is it just so intoxicating that you have to go back, or what keeps drawing you there? Yeah,
the stadium. Yeah, it's. That is a really good question, actually. So great question. I'm trying to put into, as you can tell, I'm someone who says a lot, but I do have a lot of sort of try to really weigh my words up properly as well and make sure I get the right ones. But for me, it's a bit of escapism, but also a bit of like coming home. And I know that sounds ridiculous because it's not home. And I'm not even from Milan. But what I mean by that is, there's a sense of belonging there, of community. It's somewhere where I feel, just feel like I can be. I'm I'm quite an overthinker, and obviously, like with my job and stuff, I'm, constantly fit. When I go there, it's a joy, and I'm someone who's always on my phone. But whenever I'm there, I don't want to be on my phone. I want to take in that atmosphere. I think I remember once I went to see Milan 5, Fiorentina 1. I think I just closed my eyes for about 5-10 minutes, just to hear that. Okay, that's a bit of exaggeration. It was about it felt like 5-10 minutes, just to hear the sounds and the vibrations of the place. And then you've got this song. I'm not sure if they play it anymore under the new management, but it's like Cordi Milan, and it's like this old song, and it was a Berlusconi classic, and it is like this song they made for Milan. You should totally find it. It just comes on before the start matches. And the players would sing, the fans would sing it, and it was just like a communal event that gave energy to you, and it just felt incredible for me. Like, I know you've had on the pod before people talking about Wimbledon, centre court. That for me is like you're getting ready for a show. There's that quiet sort of hush. And you're getting ready to watch something spectacular. And there's so many other stadiums where you go in there and you feel, all right, entertain me. I'm really looking forward to it. This one, for me, with Milan, especially when that song would come on, when that Milan team would come on, but even after that, when you had Ibra who would walk out as well, it was like being in a gladiator arena. Obviously, I've never been in one, but it was that similar feeling of that vibe between the players and you were playing a part in this cauldron of noise, of sound, and without wanting to be disrespectful to anybody who is deeply religious, it was that sort of, that religious experience of like all these people coming together to experience something, and that something being football, and just cheering, whatever else is happening, leaving that at the door, and just sort of enjoying, watching, and having this identity all across the ground.
I don't think you're being disrespectful to anyone who's religious. I often talk about sporting places as cathedrals or places where people come together and grieve and celebrate and mourn. And we've actually got Reverend Kate Botley coming on the show in a few weeks as well. So if she's happy to talk about a sporting place with love and reverence, I think we can make those comparisons. I completely get what you mean about San Siro, by the way. I don't have it for San Siro, but I feel at home in Soldier Field, Chicago. Like Chicago Bears are my sort of tribe that I've adopted away from home. And when I'm in Chicago, when I'm on that lakefront, I just feel like, yeah, I'm back. And even though I don't, it's weird, and you've got that shared connection with people, some of whom are from there and some of whom are from all around the world, but you've all put your passion and fandom and time and energy into this team, this cause, and they let you down from times, they annoy you at times, but when you're there, like it's like family. Like only I can say negative things about the Bears. My friends can't. I'm sure you say only you can like slag off Milan's owners and what they do. It's just like they're my team, and I'm very protective of them. And yeah, I think it's I completely get where you're coming from there.
I'm glad you said that, because you put it you put it really beautifully actually, and it's nice to know that others have that sort of it feels like home away from home, and it is for me. Like I try to go at least once a year to the stadium. Luckily, I go to Milan a fair bit, and I just feel it's not even like the best place to go. And controversial, I know. Rome and Florence as tourist destinations far better, but it's more just sort of livable, I would say, and places like Navili and Brera, they're just quite stylish and cool, and just sort of more of like a Copenhagen style loafing sort of place. But it's the stadium that for me is really home.
I was going to ask about that because I feel like Milan has this sort of exterior to the world. People know Fashion Week. People know the two big clubs. It's the only stadium that's the home of two Champions League winners. You get the Giro d'Italia, which ends in Milan every year. But people's experience of Italy is more your Romes, your Amalfi Coast, your Tuscanies and things like that. What's Milan the place like? Because why is it? I know it's a financial centre. I know it's got a commercial centre for Italy, but why has this place been able to be so successful in football?
Well, money is one of the main reasons. As you mentioned, it is the financial capital, and that powerhouse across Turin and Milan and across that area is where a lot of the money is. Therefore, there is a lot of like youth football and scouts there, and of course we've got Brescia there and Atalanta, which is literally just over there from Milan, and they are doing fantastic now, and their youth team has always been, their team now, particularly with Gasp, is really sort of consistently top four, and they're sort of like Brighton, but like far more successful in terms of like getting into the Champions League, winning the Europa League last year, etc. However, even before that, there were loads of talented players coming through Atalanta, and I think it's because that setup there is so well versed and steeped in history and tradition. Therefore, those players, a bit like you'd say like Manchester and Liverpool and that sort of band of they've got the heritage, as to use to borrow a Mourinho phrase, when it comes to player development and that sort of style. Milan itself, I mean, first time I went, apart from the first few times I went actually, and this was like more like teens and 20s, I was a little bit underwhelmed, I won't lie. Like, because you think, oh, it's the fashion capital, it's so stylish and cool. I'll tell you what, it's grey, overcast, raining, and cold.
It is Manchester, then.
It just is, honestly. And like, you'll have a rare day when it'll be, in the spring when it'll be warm, but on the whole, and it makes sense because it's northern Italy, it's, a lot of people are there, a couple of hours away from, the Alps, of course. Got Cortina Winter Games coming up, and like, where's the base going to be for that? Milan, because it's just at the bottom. So it is a place that's pretty chilly, and in the winter time, it can be pretty dark and grim, a bit like it is here in the UK as well. But there is a lot of money there as well, and the architecture there doesn't feel as European. I mean, of course, you've got the train station, which is like an architectural marvel, but like around it, for example, you've got a lot of sort of newer build, but I don't want to say new build because it sort of sounds like a 3-bedroom house that's just, with a drive and very, very sort of perfunctory. But what I mean is, like, you've got a lot of tall buildings and a lot of glass, and it is sort of got that sort of modern, sort of almost American style of architecture, or Singapore or Dubai, that sort of style of, of neighborhood. And you've got the Duomo, obviously, which is like heritage-wise very Italian. However, then around that, you've got all these huge boulevards and areas. However, it does seem like more of a place where people kind of want to be left alone, rather than like
London then.
Yeah. You want to be left alone. You come in, you're visiting, you're going to go to a restaurant, you're going to eat, you're going to stay, and then you're going to go. You're going to get into a taxi, or you're going to get on a bus, and then or a tram, and then you're off. There's only a couple of areas where you'd say they're like the super posy ones, like I mentioned, Brera, which is lovely, and that is like the more quintessential sort of Baroque style area, where you've got like the whole Renaissance style buildings, more similar to Florence. And then you've got Navigli, which is along the canal, and that's more sort of posery in the sense of where people will be seen. And you've got like Corso Como and that area where it's a bit more the celebrities and glitz and glamour and that sort of thing. However, it is one of those places that it is more of a livable city rather than like it's all out there on the shop window for you. Go check it out.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Can I ask you a question? I mean, this whole endeavour is me asking you questions. How do you feel when you see Inter using your stadium?
I've actually had to endure a match there for Inter, and it felt wrong and it felt weird. Milan do it better because of the colours as well, more than anything else. So I was, me and a couple of friends were, we were in Milan. They were playing, it was the German team. It might even have been Hoffenheim, I'm not sure, but Inter won very comfortably. It was in the Champions League a couple of years ago. I'll have to find out. Was it Hoffenheim? I can't remember. Inter won comfortably. And it just didn't feel right to me. It just felt like guests in the stadium. I'm not going to be polite about this. Also, the blue and black just doesn't suit that stadium because part of the tower is red already. And it just felt cold. And it just felt, go away.
Yeah, because it's interesting how they sort of and in some ways they are guests because it was AC Milan Stadium, and then after the war they move in, and this is a slight little detail, but it's maybe pushing me more towards a trip to Milan is they used to play in the Arena Civica, which is a neoclassical sort of architecture. It looks basically, it's built in around the early 1800s, basically designed to look like ancient Rome. And Inter's women's team have just started playing there again, and so you can go and watch modern football in this sort of classical setting as well. So if you get it right, you could maybe get an Inter women's game at the Arena Civica and then go to the proper way of doing the San Siro, according to you, which would be watching the Rossoneri. And I think that would be a lovely weekend. But I mean, imagine if you found a pencil that was blue and black at school. What would your life be?
Well, I know, it'd be completely different. However, just as a person, I'm not sure I would have gone. We'll see. But partly, I know it sounds ridiculous, but I think partly like Milan also shaped my identity, but my character has also perhaps chosen that as well, because at the time most people absolutely, and rightly so, adored Ronaldo. And so you'd hear the name, original Ronaldo, for anybody who is under 30. And when you had like Ronaldo and Vieri. You couldn't get them on the pitch at the same time, for example, but then like Adriano, you'd have all these people utter, Ronaldo, is that Inter, it's amazing. And it would just annoy me because I'd be like, yeah, okay, he's a great superstar and he's an incredible player, but like, look at the artisanal history, the way that Milan play and the patterns and Pirlo and then like Shevchenko all around, and then Kaká, it's just like, there's something different about it, which I really enjoyed, rather than the sort of brute Death Star like Inter, particularly of that generation when it was under Hector Coupe. And then the other thing about Inter at that time as well was they just felt a bit of a mess. Constantly spending, like Moratti was clearly a very generous owner and would just constantly buy these players for Inter, but somehow they would always conspire to end up either second or fifth, and there'd always be some sort of crazy Inter escapade, and then they'd sack a manager, and then Trapattoni would come back or something like that. And so it just felt like a bit of a that's Inter. So yes, maybe if I had a blue and black pencil, I would have been a Lazio fan instead, because they would have beaten Inter.
I feel like with the way that you're sort of enunciating Inter, it's almost a swear word to you. But I'm not. It's on the borderline there. So I think two final questions. Maybe they're linked. What is, as a fan, what do you want for the future of the San Siro? Because its future is in doubt. There's been talks of the clubs building a combined stadium, building their own stadiums and going their separate way. One of them staying, one of them leaving, redeveloping the San Siro, which I think the Metropolitan government is sort of pushing. San Siro was awarded the 2027 Champions League final, and it's had it taken away because of the uncertainty around, because UEFA wanted a renovation package attached to that. Not really what do you think is going to happen, but views on that are welcome. What would you like to happen? What would you like to happen? If Milan leave the San Siro, will that be a sad day for you?
It would be a sad day, but also I think its progress is needed. I absolutely adore that, and actually, if you could stay around for 50 years so future generations could experience what I have, that would be incredible. However, it's not a place now. I mean, I go and I love it as a fan. However, it's more of like an endurance in the sense of the seats are faded. It's so cold. The toilets, you don't even want to talk about it. Getting there, a bit of a safety concern. And I don't mind this because I'm happy to rough up football matches. That's what I do. That's, for work, like you, when you have to go to League One or Championship teams or whatever, that's what you do. But this is like AC Milan, and the way football is going, they've got a proposal for San Donato. I think that one might be quite interesting, and if they want to continue to compete, unfortunately with the way football is, then they would need to certainly do that. And having been to places like the Allianz Arena in Munich, just the organisation, the ground, the whole area around it. Okay, it's lacking in character because it looks exactly like the J Stadium. Probably looks pretty similar to the Spurs Stadium. I've not been there, but I've heard that the infrastructure is the same. It would be a shame that all stadiums look the same. However, for me, an ideal world is something like the architecture of the San Siro recreated, but with all those modern benefits that you're able to do in a new place would be tremendous. The San Siro itself, the amount of times I have to relay the pitch because there's not enough sunlight coming in because of the shape of it, the fact that you can only pretty much use it for football. There's no multifunctionality there. The safety concerns for people as well. The accessibility issues. A lot of things they do unfortunately need to be modernised. And I'd love it if Inter were able to modernise all those while Milan got a brand new stadium. So that would be the way I would do it, so that it's still there and still able to be used. However, for Milan, there does certainly seem to be a case that they want to go, and particularly with Casa Milan and this whole new area they've built, maybe that's the right decision. So, usually I'm good at sitting on the fence, actually, in this sense. I do think that I love the San Siro. It is an incredible place to go, and I feel like it should still be part of the fabric of the city of Milan, but maybe not as the premier football stadium for two Champions League winning teams.
Yeah, I get that emotion, that split loyalty as well. I'm a Birmingham City fan, and there's obviously the talk of building a new stadium for us. I think 55,000 seems ambitious for Birmingham City, knowing our history, but maybe. Walking away from somewhere like St Andrews, where
Yeah.
all right, it's run down. It's not the best, but it's ours, and that's the sort of like do you want the best or do you want what's yours? And heart and head will tell you different things there, and it's so I get that complete split loyalty. The one thing we have, and I know I've got to be respectful of your time, the one thing we haven't touched on, and I don't know if you've been able to go to one or whether it's going to be like that bucket list thing to do in the last couple of years of the stadium, but have you been to a Milan Inter derby, the Derby della Madonnina, which is coming up this weekend as we speak, but will be in the rearview mirror when the episode's released? How does the stadium take on a different atmosphere? Because obviously you've got two sets of home fans.
Yeah, it's so odd actually because I have been. Thankfully, Milan won. I don't think whenever I've been, Milan have lost or even drawn a match. So that is in itself, incredible. And yeah, Milan won 2-1. I think it was 2009 or 2008. Milan were pretty pants at the time. They were fighting just to get Champions League football, whereas of course Inter at the time, I think they were on a winning streak. Whether was it Mancini the manager then or Mourinho? I think it might have been Mancini. 2008 would have been Mancini just before Mourinho got there for the winning all three the Champions League, the Scudetto and the Coppa Italia. And yeah, so Inter were riding high. They may even have been top. Obviously, they had the likes of Zlatan and all the players. Milan, I mean, they still had Siro, Kaká, etc. But they were playing the Christmas tree then. And it was a little bit more the team slightly on its last legs, but even then, they can't let Inter win. And Milan were at home then. And to answer your question specifically, so Milan won 2-1, Kaká, and I think it was Pippo. I think they went 2-1, 2-0 up, then it was 2-1, something like that, and they held on, and it was nervy. The atmosphere in the stadium was anxiety. I'll tell you that, because I think it's the same for the Milan derby from the Inter side, but effectively, you just sort of lock all the away fans in one tiny little corner. You've got like the four sides, and then you've got three tiers, and I think it's just like the middle tier of one of the ends behind the goal was just for the Inter fans, and it's kind of like, stay there. So, 1/8 of the stadium is like, you lot there, do your thing. The rest of it, of course, I'm sure there's loads of going to be Inter fans everywhere else, because actually it's not one of those rivalries where, it is a rivalry, of course, but also you'll have brother and sister or two brothers or whatever it is supporting different teams, even like, husband and wife or whatever, or two best mates. So you will go. However, the majority of it while I was there were Milan fans, and they were anxious Milan fans. And rather than the Rome match where I went to Milan-Roma for the Scudetto winning time, where it was just sort of like, let's do this, everyone together, or the Milan-Fiorentina, when it was kind of like, we're Milan, we're going to beat Fiorentina, or the other Roma one where it was Zlatan orchestrating the show, etc. I don't want to talk too much about it. This match specifically, for me, felt anxious. And I felt that. I've been to a couple, actually, and that one sticks out because it was the first time I went to, and I felt so nervous. I was just watching other people as well, and they had nerves, and it was kind of almost like we can't let them win rather than we want to win, or you know what I mean? It sort of felt like that. And that's the difference. I don't actually enjoy the Milan derby, A, to watch it, or B, to actually go to it, for that very reason, where it had like a different sort of tense atmosphere in the football. There was a lot more misplaced passes, in that sense, a bit like a derby, of course, but rather than that whole, grit and power and passion that you'll get from a derby match where sort of like the crowd will be into it and they'll be heightened, it felt a little bit more just sort of stay back and a bit more sort of distracted. That's kind of how I felt about certainly the first one I went to anyway.
No, it sounds so amazing. I think it's one of those things that a lot of people want to experience, and whether it's San Siro on Derby Day or any other Saturday or Sunday throughout the autumn and winter. I hope I can get to it before it becomes a relic of football past, like the Arena Civica. And thank you for sharing your grandeur with us, Qasa. Thank you.
No worries. Absolute pleasure to talk about the San Siro, and thank you so much for having me on.
Thank you, Qasa. Thank you for sharing your memories of the San Siro with us. I love that. What a lovely bloke. What a genuinely charming bloke as well, and impossibly sort of good-looking, photogenic, telegenic sort of smile as well. He's not envious at all of him and all his success, and going away at age 15 to watch AC Milan games in Italy. What a great life. Anyway, I enjoyed it, and I hope you did too. And if you did enjoy that, maybe go into our archive. We have other great European football stadiums that we've covered. I can remember Uli Hess and the Westfalenstadion from Borussia Dortmund. That's one of our more popular episodes. Way back around sort of, I don't know, episode number 14, 15, something like that. It's in the teens anyway. If you're going back on these on numbers, you've got people like Tim Vickery, who, when we looked at Estadio San Januario in Rio de Janeiro, you've got the Christopher Highland episode on La Bombonera in Argentina. So if you like thinking about non-English grounds, non-British grounds, we have those in our archive, and I would encourage you to make a search of that and see what you like, see what you might discover. You'd have heard me reference the Reverend Kate Botley in that chat with Qasa, and that's going to be our episode next week. And so we're going from a massive 80,000 seater stadium in northern Italy to a tiny community rugby club just outside Sheffield. And honestly, it is a brilliant chat. Such a warm, funny, likable, personable guest with great stories, strong opinions, very strong opinions about sport and its place in community, etc. And I hope you join us next week to hear from the Reverend Kate Botley. Until next time.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
If you're a maintenance supervisor for a commercial property, you've had to deal with everything from leaky faucets to flickering light bulbs. But nothing's worse than that ancient boiler that's lived in the building since the day it was built, 50 years ago. It's enough to make anyone lose their cool. That's where Grainger comes in. With industrial-grade products and dependable fast delivery, Grainger can help with any challenge, from worn-out components to everyday necessities. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.